Well, about 20 years ago, he called the business HelloPeter. Now it's goodbye, Peter, to HelloPeter, because he turned it into one of the biggest customer service sites in the world. When we needed to rant about poor service, we visited the site. Now the founder is stepping down. So tonight, I am Bruce Whitfield. Tonight, we speak to Peter Cheales, the founder of the online customer service site HelloPeter, on his decision to sell the site. How does it feel to be goodbye, Peter, rather than hello, Peter?
It feels terrible. I mean,
oh, rubbish. You've never looked more relaxed in your life.
It feels appalling. I mean, I've been emotional about it. I've felt awful about it. And when I announced it in a newsletter yesterday, the outpouring of support was fantastic. So thank you, first of all, to the people that acknowledged my departure.
But why sell?
I've been going for 15 years. The idea was a little tiny figment of my imagination, which I developed into a large website. And Bruce, I need more energy and more new blood in that business, and I've reached my ceiling. It's now time for me to take my paintbrush off the canvas and let other people continue with the work.
Who's buying?
A group of investors have bought it. A group of local. It's headed up by a local group, but with international money coming into it, and I'm sure they'll announce it quite soon.
But the reason why we need to know who's bought it is we need to know about the integrity of HelloPeter, because the integrity of HelloPeter has been its independence.
Yes.
Can you give assurances, and did you care because they brought along a big fat checkbook? Do people still bring along checkbooks to deals? I don't know.
They bring back EFTs. You see,
okay.
They brought along an EFT, and I did look at the integrity. It's a very good point you bring up there, because obviously we cannot have a large supplier buying the website and then favoring themselves over everybody else. What I can tell you is that the integrity is sound. The name is going to be the same. The philosophy is identical, and they're going to do good things with it, I think, and I hope. And I sincerely believe that they will. It
started off, it was probably the first social network in South Africa. I mean, it sort of predates Facebook. You didn't quite get the same traction as that other guy did, that Zuckerberg kid in America. You know, but you were, I think, probably ahead of your time. The internet, we forget, 15 years ago was in its infancy. People had dial-up modems on their computers. They really had to care about something to go online and to have a rant.
We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Twitter. The word blog hadn't been invented. And so it was pretty revolutionary for its time. I'm pleased that the other social media have come in and aided HelloPeter, actually, because we can juxtapose HelloPeter into the other distribution networks, like, for example, Facebook and Twitter, and get far greater reach than we could have got before. So it's helped rather than hindered the HelloPeter site.
Mm. I mean, and HelloPeter's integrity over time, I mean, it's remained a ferocious watchdog. Has it been an effective watchdog?
I really hope it has. I think it's become a powerful name in its own right. It's in fact become a powerful verb in its own right. I'll HelloPeter you. I'll get onto that website and do something about it, and it's created somewhat of a cautious step in the minds of the suppliers. So yeah, I sincerely hope that I've made an impact on the consumer service in South Africa, and hopefully in other parts of the world as well, Bruce.
Not all suppliers, though, have bought into it. I mean, you've had to subscribe as a corporate in South Africa for the right to respond to complaints to HelloPeter. Most companies have bought in, but a bunch. I think Woolies, for example, hasn't.
Woolworths hasn't. South African Airways did, but doesn't, because there's a change in the department and personnel don't come in and rebuy. So yeah, there are a number of companies that have bought into the concept and have remained with the concept over time, which has been fantastic. You know, Telesure, for example, many of the insurance companies, MTN, Cell C, Vodacom, all the banks have been there from the beginning. And I'm really grateful to them, because I expected there to be very much greater traction from the smaller companies, and resistance from the bigger companies, when in fact it was exactly the other way around.
Big companies can afford it. Smaller companies, you've been criticised over the last 15 years that small companies have really struggled because anybody can go onto the site and make a complaint, an unsubstantiated complaint. And small companies believe that their reputations are tarnished in the process.
Of course, but you know, bear in mind that there's a sliding scale. So a smaller company, if they've got less than 3 or 4 complaints, they're going to be paying under 500 Rand a year, whereas that's certainly not the case for the bigger companies. You know, the payment is made according to the number of reports that are on the website. A little company is going to have very much fewer complaints and compliments than a bigger company, and therefore pay a hell of a lot less.
South Africa's economy has changed dramatically over the last 15, 20 years. We were a very closed economy, a very closed society 20 years ago. There's been more competition over the years, but we still are an economy dominated by massive players. Is that almost played into your hands, the fact that there is so little competition that the only choice we have as consumers is to rant and rave rather than simply to switch providers?
No, it isn't the case. There are a few big players out there, sure, but we've still got the choice. We've got far more choice than we had before. There are big players that own different brands, and what's good for HelloPeter is that once a big player has one brand on board, all the other brands follow suit. So rather than being a negative, it's actually been a positive. You're still able to switch and in fact identify an industry where you can't, and you'll find that it's only the state-controlled industries that you can't switch. For every other industry you can switch brands, you can switch companies immediately.
What is the most complained about brand in South Africa?
The most complained about brand is the brand that has the most customers. There's a direct correlation between the two. So for example, Telkom is a complained about brand. However, one's got to be quite careful because despite the fact that they've got very many complaints, they've also got compliments. So the proportion of complaints to compliments is still pretty good.
So how then do you assess South Africa's worst brand? Do you then assess it in terms of complaints versus compliments? Do you get a ratio?
We can get ratios, and we can get just pure numbers of complaints, and we can get all sorts of mathematical formula at the end of the day, but it's the brand that has perhaps the least amount of complaints and the most amount of, I beg your pardon, the least amount of compliments and the most amount of complaints.
Which is which brand?
I would say it's probably a cell phone. Probably the cell phone companies are ranked up there.
Do companies, when they have high levels of complaints and low levels of compliments, take those factors seriously? Is there a real intention to deal with the issues, or do they simply participate in a HelloPeter type environment in order to appease and to do PR? Is it a PR extension?
Look, you know, that's a very good point as well. And I think that what we have found and what I have found over the last 15 years is that the more involvement from the executives of the organization in their customer service branding and in their customer service orientation, the better their relationship with their customers. There's a direct correlation between the two. If the customer service facility is simply palmed off onto a customer service department, then you're finding that that participation without much soul.
Let me ask the question then, who responds best? Who then actively buys into the customer service ethos in South Africa? Because dealing with companies, I mean, we've seen the Cell C debacle recently, of course, spectacular individual response. Stuff HelloPeter, I'm going Hello Banner. And
well, he went HelloPeter too.
Absolutely, but but it was just the rage was so palpable, the fury was so strong that he was willing to part with 60 or 70 grand of his own money.
And I think
to
good
rant.
for him, and hats off to him, and well done indeed to that. And
but who does it best?
I've loved working with, I loved initially working with a lady called Linda Drew Drury of Standard Bank. She was so fantastic at responding that she was just promoted out of all proportion. So I unfortunately lost contact with her. But it's about individuals within organizations. But it's always about the individual. I mean, I love working with the Telesure group, whether it's First for Women or it's Budget, because they're so brilliant and so on the ball at responding, and they love it. Outsurance is another one. where these people really get involved in the responses, and they're fantastic to work with. They really are.
Where do you get the best resolution then in consumer complaints in South Africa? Because we've got a consumer commission, and we've got all this other sort of bureaucratic nonsense that doesn't seem to be permeating or even piercing the start of the issues when it comes to consumer issues.
Look, you've got the watchdogs without any teeth, and they make a lot of noise and they bark, but they don't bite, and that's the problem. So one's got to literally resort to the HelloPeter site. It is the biggest in the world. It is the most powerful in South Africa, and that's all there is to it. And therefore, it does produce the best results. So the answer to your question is go back onto HelloPeter.com. The name is not changing. The philosophy is not changing. And I sincerely hope that the new owners will make the customers and the suppliers of HelloPeter very proud.
What happens to Peter Cheales now?
I unplug, I take my paintbrush off the canvas, and I go back to what I did before HelloPeter, which was to write books and to speak at conferences.
But are books a means to a conference?
Of course.
Or do people genuinely buy? I mean, what impact do the books have beyond the speaking opportunities that they provide?
They have no impact whatsoever. they are simply an ego trip for the author, and that's all there is to it. I just have more content to put down now.
But does your focus remain consumer?
It will remain consumer, but I would like to move into the entrepreneurial market as well, of having built this website, having created this monster, this elephant, far bigger branding than me. It's been an exciting time, and it deserves a story on its own.
So do you write the HelloPeter story? I mean, we've seen
I would like to.
Ian Furr has written the most wonderful book about his 40 years in business, the Sorbet founder, and it's a fabulous story about the behind-the-scenes adventures of business. You've got to write that book, surely.
I would like to. I mean, I think
commit to it now.
There is definitely a HelloPeter book coming up. There's got to be. And it's exciting.
Goodbye, Peter. It's the end of an era. It most certainly is. Peter Cheales, the founder of the online customer service site HelloPeter. It's goodbye, Peter, and it's goodbye from me as well for this evening. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Good night and goodbye, Peter.